Good morning, students. My name is Joseph John. I will be your lab instructor for this course. So today we will familiarize with two very important instruments. One of the instruments is the arbitrary waveform generator, or just the arbitrary function generator, or you can just think of it as just function generator. The other instrument is the digital storage oscilloscope. Now, when you do experiments, you need different types of functions. For example, when you are doing an experiment with an amplifier, an operation amplifier, you will need sine waves. But when you do an experiment with a digital circuit, you would need square waves or a digital pulse signal. And we will also use another function in one of the experiments where we would use a ramp signal. Ramp means a triangular signal. So let's look at the arbitrary function generator. This instrument is called an arbitrary function generator. Why it's called arbitrary? Because everything here is digital. It can also give you, in addition to sine wave, square wave, ramp, it can also give you a stored waveform. So that's why any arbitrary waveform you can feed. That's why it's called an arbitrary function generator. But you can think of this as a function generator. Now, in a function generator, there are two major parameters. So one is the frequency and one is the amplitude. So right now we have chosen sine wave here. So you can see a sine wave appearing on the display. So this being a very sophisticated function generator, it also gives you a display and it also shows you what you have selected, which is not available with most of the common function generators. You can change the function to a square and you would see that a square wave is generated, or you can choose a ramp or a triangular wave, or you could choose a pulse. Why pulse? In a case of a pulse, you can change the duty ratio, the high to low ratio, and then you have an arbitrary mode which we will not use. So let's go back to one of the functions, which is the sine. Now, assuming you have chosen the signal, you need to now choose the two parameters. One is the frequency. Now you would choose the frequency in two ways. What you need to do is you need to choose the frequency button. So once you choose that particular one is selected, once you have selected it, you have two ways of changing the frequency. Right now the frequency is showing as 1 kilohertz. You can use the dial here and change it, and you can see there's a cursor below that particular numeral. So it can be changed to 1, 2, 3. Now if I want it more fine, I need to bring that cursor that to the next point, which I do it by moving here. So right now it's at the first decimal point. So if I change it now, it will become 2.1, 2.2 and so on. If I take it to the next decimal point, I can make it 2.41, 42 and so on. And if I take it to the next one, I can make it 2.431. So that way you can get very precise frequency values you can get. That is the purpose. Now, typically you would be using signals within about 1 megahertz. So you don't need more than 1 megahertz. So by just keep on changing this particular knob, you can change it. The other way you do it is you can enter the value here. For example, if I want 4 kilohertz, I can enter here 4 and then I choose kilohertz. So the frequency will become 4 kilohertz. So you can use the keypad here also and enter whatever value you want. So these are the two ways you change, whether this frequency or the amplitude. So now let's look at the amplitude. So to change the amplitude, I choose the third button from the top. When I press that, it has gone into the amplitude menu. Now, once again, right now, the signal is showing as 2 volt peak to peak. This is sine wave. So, 2 volt peak to peak would mean a positive peak of 1 volt and a negative peak of minus 1 volt. So, 2 volt peak to peak. And the offset shown there is now 0 millivolt. Now, there are experiments you might need an offset. So, if you want to change the offset, you can change it. Or if I want to first, let me just change the amplitude. So, right now I chosen the amplitude. By increasing or decreasing, I can change the amplitude. Once again, just like we change the values here, I can bring it to the first decimal point and make it 4.1 and so on. Or I can also enter this value just like the previous case. Now, I can give an offset value. So, right now I want to give an offset. Right now it's 0 millivolt. If I give an offset here, I can change the offset to whatever value I want. Yeah. So, I want to familiarize you with how you make connections. What I have with me is a BNC cable which you would be using for making connections. So, this basically has a BNC connector here which goes in here, and then for the oscilloscope we would use a CRO probe or an oscilloscope probe, which is a very special probe. One of the most common mistakes students make is they sometimes use this as a BNC cable. You should never do that. This should be used only with the oscilloscope. So, what I have done now is I have connected the BNC cable to the oscilloscope probe. We will talk about the probe later. So, right now you can see that whatever we are choosing there. So, right now the frequency chosen is 1 kilohertz and the amplitude is 2 volt peak to peak, and it's connected on the oscilloscope. You can see that the oscilloscope is showing peak to peak 2.08 and the frequency is showing us roughly 1 kilohertz. So, this is a digital storage oscilloscope. We will talk about it later. So, let me make some changes and you would see that the same changes will be reflected there. So, right now we will change the amplitude slightly and you would see that correspondingly the amplitude is changing there. Similarly, if I change the offset here, you would see that when I change the offset value, you can see when I do the offset, the waveform is going. When I am giving a positive offset, the waveform is moving up and down, and when I give negative, it comes down. When I give positive offset, it goes up. Yeah. So, this is basically to show you how the function generator works. A few very important things to notice here about the function generator is you need to choose. There is an output switch here that should be switched on. Right now it's on. If I just switch off, then you see that the waveform disappears from the oscilloscope, even though it's shown there, because there is no output here. So, to get an output, you need to keep this switch on, very important. Second thing is the parameters which you are choosing here, you can either be from channel 1 or channel 2. Channel 1 and channel 2 are identified by the colors. Channel 1 has an yellow color, so you can see this yellow color here. If I change this channel switch here, I can change it to blue, and that would, now whatever changes I make would be corresponding to the channel 2, and you can see all the colors have changed to blue. So, right now let me bring it back to channel 1. Now, another very important thing to remember about the function generator is when you do digital experiments, you would be using TTL output. TTL stands for transistor logic. Now, here what you will see is that right now the frequency is 1 kilohertz and the amplitude chosen is 2 volt peak to peak. But if I connect the signal to the TTL, you would see that the signal is positive. So this is a TTL signal, and you see that whatever changes you make in the amplitude or offset will not change. Only the frequency will be changed. So let me change the frequency. So you can change the frequency. You can change the frequency and the frequency will change, but the amplitude will not change. Now this signal is positive. So it's very important that when you do digital experiments, you should use only the TTL output. You should not use the other output. So these are the major things to remember about the arbitrary function generator. Now we'll talk about CRO and DSO. CRO is the most versatile instrument an electrical engineer has. Right from the last about 50 or last about almost 70 years, this has been the constant companion of an electrical engineer. So a CRO or cathode ray oscilloscope, what it has is, you might have seen your old TVs which you have. Unfortunately, most of them have disappeared now. Most of the time now we have our flat screen TVs. But if you have seen one of those old TV your receiving instrument, you would have seen that it's quite bulky and it's long. That is because it has a cathode ray tube. So what do we have in this particular, the CRO is nothing but an instrument which will show you the signal visually. You can think of this like an electronic graph sheet, and it will show you signal in real time. Why is a CRO a very versatile instrument? Because you can test at different points of a circuit and find out what is the signal coming. For example, you want to find the gain of an amplifier. Let's say that you connected an input of, let's say, 1 volt peak to peak to an amplifier, and if your gain of the amplifier is 10, you would like to see whether the output you got a sine wave of 10 volt peak to peak. And if the circuit is working, you will get. If it's not working, it will not work. If it's not working, then you can use it as a diagnosing. You have to diagnose as to what happened. So in a CRO, what it has is basically, first of all, this cathode ray tube, where you have an electron gun which is heated, and then you have an anode. So the electron gun, the electrons get accelerated, and they would finally hit the screen which has a phosphor, and you will see the color. Just like in a color TV, you have those RGB, the red, green and blue colors. In a CRO, most of the time the CRTs, they would give you kind of almost like a green color, phosphor. So essentially it has 3 major things. One thing is the electron tube. The other one is what is called a vertical amplifier. You would apply your signal to the vertical amplifier. It will amplify that particular signal, and it will be applied finally to the vertical deflection plates. Similarly, you will have a horizontal amplifier, which signal will finally be applied to the horizontal plates. Now, essentially what you have inside a CRO is the following. On the x-axis, you have a sawtooth waveform. Sawtooth meaning you would have a waveform, a ramp waveform. On the rising it will be positive, but the falling will be very sharp. So this is why it's called a sawtooth waveform. So that particular sawtooth waveform is calibrated in time. It will be linear, and it will say 1 millisecond per centimeter and so on the display. So that is the what is called the sawtooth waveform. And then you would apply the signal to the vertical amplifier. Now only when the input signal is synchronized to the sawtooth waveform, you will get a stable display. To do this, you need to do what is called triggering. And this is unfortunately the most complicated or the confusing part of a CRO. Now, what is triggering? What you are telling is, you are essentially telling the CRO when to start the beam. So if you have a sine wave and let's say you want to display the sine wave, by using the trigger circuit you can tell the CRO to start when the signal is at let's say 0.5 volts or at 1 volt, and the beam will start. And then after once you might have multiple cycles, one cycle or more cycles, and finally it will come back. So the trigger you need to choose, we will show you some of these controls. And so trigger, you need to ensure that your trigger circuit, your trigger value is within the signal level. So this would explain briefly the functioning of a CRO. Let's look at the internal circuitry or the main blocks of a CRO. What we have here is a cathode ray tube, and you can see that this is quite long, and that's why our TV sets are, the old TV sets are quite bulky. Now what is extremely dangerous to notice, what is important to notice here is this CRT uses very high voltage, typically anywhere from 5000 to 10,000 volts. Therefore, you should never ever open a television set, the old television sets or a CRT. So this is extremely dangerous. This one thing to notice here. So let's look at the front panel of the CRO. So you have what we have done is we have connected the same signal from the function generator to the CRO, and you can see a sine wave shown here. Now here you have basically two controls. This control, these are basically the two channels, and this particular channel you would use it to say how many, what is the there are these graduations here, they are in centimeters. So right now it is put in 0.5 volts per division, and there are 4 divisions. So this is the signal 2 volt peak to peak. So you can see it's roughly 4 divisions, and if I make it 1 volt per division, you will see that it has. So what we are seeing is triggering. So this is what is called triggering. Now when you make it stable, it gets triggered, and triggering. So now it's triggered. So if I go here, this is 2 volt. So this is what is called triggering. So by making that to make that display steady is what is called triggering, and that's the most difficult part and the most confusing part of a CRO. But in a CRO, you don't have many controls to adjust or to aid you, but we'll see when you see in the digital storage oscilloscope, we'll see that some of the things are very easily done there. Similarly, you have a time base. This is the time base we are talking about. If I just expand it, you can see I can change the sort to the x-axis. So right now it is on 0.5 milliseconds per division. Okay, so you will see that there are, you can see 2 divisions, so which means 1 millisecond. So measurements, making measurements in a CRO is a bit difficult, but in a DSO these things are much better. What we have here is the block diagram of a digital storage oscilloscope which you will be using, or DSO which you will be using in the lab. We will not be using the analog CRO, we will be using the digital storage oscilloscope. So you can see that you have an amplifier where you apply your signal, but then you have an analog to digital converter and a demultiplexer, and the remaining is very similar to your laptop. That once the signal is become digitized, it comes to a memory, the acquisition memory, and then a microprocessor will decide on what to display, and finally you have a display memory, and whatever is in the display memory is displayed on the display. So this is the digital storage oscilloscope. One of the most important thing to notice here is if you compare the digital storage oscilloscope, it is very handy, portable, very small, and it weighs about say 1 kilogram, as compared to the CRT, which is quite bulky and it's quite heavy. This will be about at least about 10 kilograms. It's quite bulky and heavy. Now let's look at the functioning of the DSO. So what we have done is, I have used the BNC cable. Now I'll explain the functioning of a DSO. So what we have done is, we have connected the output of the AFG or the arbitrary functionator using a BNC cable, and I have connected it through a CRO probe to the DSO. Now before we start, one very important thing to notice here is the oscilloscope input has 1 megohm is the input resistance. So that's one thing very important to notice. So that's fixed for all oscilloscopes, and the input circuit of the oscilloscope, whether it's a CRO or there is a DSO, will be 1 megohm in parallel with a capacitance which will change depending on the bandwidth of this oscilloscope. This particular DSO is a 60 megahertz. It has 60 megahertz bandwidth, meaning it can display a sine wave up to 60 megahertz. The CRO which I showed you could show only 20 megahertz. So this is one thing we will notice. The input impedance of the CRO or the DSO is 1 megohm. So what I want to show is how the basic functioning, how would you use it. So right now it's connected to channel 1 here. So we have two channels, channel 1 and channel 2. Okay. So right now the channel 1, the signal which is shown here as amplitude 3 volt peak to peak is basically, let me bring it to 2 volt. Yeah, so you can see this would be two divisions here. This channel 1 scale is 1 volt. So you can see, being a digital story oscilloscope, you have a lot of measurement, becomes very easy compared to an analog scope where measurements are difficult. And the time base here is 500 microseconds or 0.5 milliseconds. So if I just bring it to the center, you can see that there are two divisions here which makes it 1 millisecond. So one other thing is, if I want to see my signal more, in terms of I want to have a much larger display, I would choose. Right now it is in 500 millivolt. Therefore, I can see there are 4 divisions. You can see 4 centimeters, 2 up to here and 2 here. So that makes it 2 volt peak to peak. Now the DSO has the facility to measure the frequency. Therefore, you can see it's roughly 1 kilohertz. Now, so this is depending on which channel you are using, channel 1 or channel 2. So channel 1, let's say that I have channel 2 also, then what I need to do is I can move channel 2 signal up or down. Similarly, I can move channel 1 up or down using the position. So these two are the major controls you'll be using. You would use channel 1 to either toggle switch. If you press it, it will go. So it's a toggle switch, you can press it on and off. And right now channel 2 is on, you can see that line. I will just switch it off. Press it again, it will switch off. So the other control we must do is basically the horizontal, which is the time base. So by doing this, what you are doing is essentially we are telling how many divisions. Right now it is 250 microseconds, which means this sine wave, if I want to measure the period, again I can move the waveform by using the horizontal position. So if I want to see let's say I just want to measure the frequency just by looking at the display, not using automatic measurements. So I can bring it to the center, and you can see that it 250 microseconds, and you can see there are 4 divisions. It makes it 1000 microseconds or 1 millisecond. So this horizontal, you would use the time base. You can, depending on you want to see the waveform expanded or not, you can use it. For expanding it, you can keep on going to the right side, and for compressing it, you can come to turn it towards the left side. Now, the next important thing, or the most confusing for most students, is the triggering. And as we saw in the analog scope, triggering is very, very important. So what is triggering? Now, trigger is basically, by triggering, what you are doing is you are synchronizing the signal which is coming from the AFG to the time base of the DSO. Mind you, these are two different instruments, therefore they are not in synchronism. So, but here if you want to get a steady display, you need to synchronize them. So how do you synchronize? So the way you synchronize is, you would use the trigger level. Now, if you see that when I move this trigger level button here, the knob here, you see that you see an arrow which is changing here, going up and down. When I change it, you can see it going up and down. Okay. Similarly, you would see that there is an arrow on the top, which basically, so the intersection between these two would decide what is the triggering point. So right now, the intersection is slightly, so if I just change it to, so you can see that I can make it exactly 0. So now the, yeah, let me just make it here, and so this would tell you the trigger point. Now if I keep increasing the trigger level, you can see that the triggering point keeps on increasing. This is the intersection between these two is the triggering point. So please note what will happen, what is going to happen. Right now it is triggered. As soon as I go outside, let's see what will happen. It's not triggered. Why? Because intersection between these two is outside this beam. And this is the most common problems you would interfere. So what should you do? You should bring this particular point within the triggering, and you see this triggered. Now on the lower end, as you keep going down, you can see the triggering point keeps on sliding, but you can come only up to that particular point. Let's go down all the way, and you see that once it goes below this, it's again not triggered. So before you do before you get confused, make sure that your trigger is chosen correctly. Number one. The other one is, right now we have only one channel. If you have two channels, your trigger source you need to choose. So right now the trigger source is channel 1, and you would also see that as I am changing the potentiometer, you can see that the display here is changing. So that is telling what is the trigger point. Okay, so right now it's about plus 40 millivolt is the trigger point, and the source is showing as channel 1. So if you have now let me change that source. If you change the source, you will see again it will go outside. So trigger menu, let me come to trigger menu. Right now the source is channel 1. Let's say by mistake you have made it channel 2, and you see that the signal is again not triggered. So what you need to do is, you need to bring it back to the channel which you want to trigger. So there are many options: channel 1, channel 2, which is the most commonly used, and then you have something called external trigger, which you will not worry about now. But this is when, assume that you have a signal which is very, very small, but you know that this signal has a synchronism with another signal outside, that you can connect to the external trigger through the external, the external trigger socket you can connect. Now the next one you have is external or channel 5, and then AC. Assume that your signal is AC, then sometimes we using this, if it's a 50 Hz signal, this would be a better option. And now it's channel 1. So these are this is one very common mistake students will make. Now the other important thing you notice here is the type. Right now is the edge, which means right now it's triggering on the positive edge. If I just change it, you can see right now it has gone to video. We will not use video. This is in a pulse mode, and edge. So we would choose edge, and again you can choose whether it is rising or falling. Right now it's on the rising one. So this intersection is showing here. But if I press this, now it's on the falling edge. So you can see it's getting triggered. The intersection of these two is on the falling edge. Now another very, very important thing to notice here is your mode should be always auto. Now you have another one called normal, and most of the time when you choose normal, your signal may not get triggered. So it's better to always keep it in the auto mode. Now the other one is what is called coupling, which means your signal, if it has a lot of DC, then the trigger ideally should not have that big DC coming. Then you would choose the AC coupling. But in our case, we have chosen. There are many options, but you need not worry about it. We will just use the AC coupling. It also will work. But most of the time, what you need is DC coupling. If you have, let's say, a DC signal, for example, you want to measure the offset and all properly, so it's better to put the DC coupling. Now, there is a panic button which is available. In case you are totally confused as to what is happening and you are not able to trigger, then there is a panic button. That is this auto set. If you press the auto set, then the DSO will automatically look at all the parameters and will come back to the appropriate one. So this one we don't want you to use, but you are welcome to use it as a panic button. If nothing is working, then press it. So